Manipulators are everywhere. They wear smiles, speak with honeyed words, and make you feel like the problem is always yours. For years, I fell into their traps without even realizing it, letting their whispers steer my decisions, cloud my judgment, and erode my confidence. It took countless betrayals and moments of self-doubt before I began to see the invisible web they weave. A web designed to keep you weak, compliant, and distracted. If you want to reclaim control, if you want to walk into any room and know who holds the real power, you need to understand one thing. Manipulation is not accidental. It is intentional, cold, calculated, and ruthless. And the moment you recognize this, you can fight it, outsmart it, and bend it to your advantage. The first rule is deceptively simple. Observe before reacting. Manipulators thrive on impulsive reactions. They push buttons, trigger emotions, and watch as chaos unfolds. They do not want your calm, they want your storm. The second you lose control, they feed off it, twisting your anger, your shame, your fear into a tool for themselves. That's why patience is your weapon. Step back, breathe, and assess. Watch their patterns, their subtle shifts in tone, the way their eyes linger on the vulnerable points they've already identified. Every word they speak is a hint, every smile a calculated pause. Your strength comes from restraint, the power to see without reacting, to know without revealing, to listen without confirming their assumptions. Next comes the art of strategic silence. The manipulator thrives on your words. Every explanation, every defense, every attempt to justify yourself is fuel for their control. They do not need you to fight. They need you to speak. Silence, when wielded correctly, is louder than any argument. It is the pause that unsettles, the stillness that forces them to reveal more than intended. They cannot read your mind, and when you do not feed them information, the balance of power subtly shifts. Keep your words minimal, measured, and precise. Speak only when it serves you, and always ensure that what you reveal strengthens your position, never theirs. Understanding their motives is Rule 4. Manipulators are not abstract enemies. They are human beings with needs, fears, and obsessions. Some seek control to mask insecurity, others to satisfy greed, and some to compensate for their inability to handle accountability. By deciphering their motives, you no longer react to the illusion they create. You react to reality, and reality is always easier to outmaneuver than deception. Knowledge is your shield. By seeing what drives them, you anticipate their moves before they make them, and you prepare your counter without ever revealing your hand. Rule 5 is perhaps the most insidious. Never assume goodwill. Manipulators rely on your empathy against you. They exploit trust, kindness, and patience, twisting them into weakness. If you enter every interaction assuming good intentions, you are already a step behind. Instead, treat every word and action with healthy skepticism. Assess, verify, and challenge silently. Protect your vulnerabilities and never offer them freely. They are weapons in the wrong hands. By expecting deception, you neutralize it. You prepare, you predict, and you remain untouchable. Rule 6. Control the narrative. Manipulators distort reality. They twist facts, rewrite conversations, and weaponize selective memory. The moment you allow them to define the story, you lose the battlefield. Your task is simple. Always maintain clarity over your reality. Document interactions when necessary, clarify intentions without over-explaining, and make your truth undeniable. Do not argue every lie. They thrive on conflict, but ensure that your narrative remains stronger, cleaner, and more believable than theirs. Control it and you guide the outcome. Lose it and you are a puppet in their theater. The 7th rule is a lesson in selective engagement. Not every manipulator deserves your energy. Some will attempt minor provocations, others will escalate to threats or subtle sabotage. Recognize which battles are worth fighting and which are traps. Engaging indiscriminately only drains your focus, clouds your judgment, and exhausts your will. By carefully choosing where to apply pressure, you conserve your strength and force them to reveal their hand, without giving them victory through your reaction. Rule 8 is turn their tactics against them. Every manipulator uses predictable patterns: guilt, fear, flattery, or intimidation. Once you identify these levers, you can anticipate them and redirect their efforts. Allow them to overreach. Encourage them to reveal their strategy while you remain calm and detached. This is not revenge, it is preparation. Knowledge in action is power. And the more they push, the more mistakes they make, and the more you gain leverage. The 9th rule: maintain your independence. Manipulators want control. and control requires dependence. Guard your time, resources, and emotions. Do not let them isolate you from support or diminish your confidence. Independence is armor. The less they can manipulate through need, fear, or loyalty, the more untouchable you become. Financial freedom, emotional resilience, and strategic alliances are not luxuries. They are essential defenses. Rule 10, the final one in this opening section, is embrace ruthless clarity. Recognize your goals, values, and limits. Never compromise clarity for comfort or appeasement. Manipulators feed on ambiguity. They exploit hesitation and doubt. By committing fully to your principles, you deny them entry. Your vision becomes a shield, your certainty a weapon, and your calm a fortress. The path to outsmarting manipulators is not about retaliation or aggression. It is about precision, strategy, and unwavering self-mastery. Every rule here forms a layer of armor, a silent countermeasure, a blueprint for mental invincibility. To navigate the world of hidden agendas, deceit, and psychological traps, you must embody these rules until they are instinct, until calm observation, measured words, and calculated action define your existence. The moment you internalize them, manipulators lose their edge and the power. Number 2, emotional manipulation. After you've observed, mastered silence, and understood motives, the next battlefield is emotional manipulation. Manipulators thrive on your emotions because they are predictable, malleable, and exploitable. Anger, guilt, fear, or shame can be turned into weapons by someone trained in the art of psychological warfare. The moment you allow your feelings to dictate your response, you surrender the advantage. That is why emotional detachment is not cold. It is tactical. It is armor. Learn to separate events from emotion. When someone tries to provoke you, step outside the moment. View it objectively and ask, what is this person trying to gain? How can I turn this in my favor? By converting emotional attacks into strategic insights, you transform vulnerability into power. Manipulators are experts at creating dependency. They subtly make you feel as though you need their approval, guidance, or protection. They feed ego and inflate your insecurities at the same time. A dual technique designed to trap you in psychological chains. The second rule of defense here is reclaim autonomy. Remind yourself constantly, you are capable, self-sufficient, and resourceful. Build skills, knowledge, and networks that reinforce independence. The more they cannot control your choices, the weaker their influence becomes. Recognize dependency not as weakness, but as a battleground. Your ability to function without their validation turns their subtle pressures into irrelevant noise. One of the most overlooked weapons of manipulators is the illusion of choice. They make you believe you are deciding freely, when in reality, every option presented favors them. Understanding this principle allows you to reframe the decision-making landscape. You can either reject the false options outright, create new choices they cannot anticipate, or leverage their own suggestions against them. The goal is simple. Never fight on the battlefield they define. Always redraw the map on your terms. When you dictate the context, the manipulator loses control before a word is even spoken. Rule 4. Learn to identify gaslighting early. Gaslighting is subtle. It is the whisper that convinces you that your memory is faulty, your perception flawed, and your instincts untrustworthy. The manipulator wants you questioning yourself while they operate freely. Counter this with meticulous documentation and unwavering confidence in your observations. Keep records, notes, or any evidence of events. Trust yourself first. Let evidence confirm your understanding, and you remain unshakable. Every moment they attempt to distort reality becomes an opportunity for you to expose their lies and reclaim authority. Rule 5. Leverage their overconfidence. Manipulators often rely on charm, charisma, or social perception to mask their insecurities. They believe they are untouchable because others do not question them, or so they hope. By understanding their ego, you can create situations where overconfidence becomes a trap. Encourage them to reveal their strategies publicly. Push them into committing to statements or promises, and then use these very elements to counteract them when necessary. Manipulators often walk into their own snare. Your role is to recognize it first. Next, we confront social triangulation. Many manipulators attempt to control perception by involving third parties, spreading subtle lies, planting doubt, or creating conflict indirectly. This is where your network becomes vital. Build trust with allies, document interactions, and remain consistent in your narrative. Do not feed drama. Control it by addressing situations calmly and directly. Remember, manipulators rely on uncertainty. By providing clarity to yourself and your circle, you cut the oxygen from their strategies. When everyone sees the truth clearly, the manipulator's influence evaporates. Rule 7. Strategic kindness as camouflage. The manipulator expects resistance, hostility, or defensiveness. By occasionally responding with calm, measured kindness, you create confusion in their calculations. They cannot anticipate motives they cannot read. Strategic kindness does not mean weakness. It is a tool. It disarms, disrupts patterns, and provides opportunities to observe without escalating conflict. This approach ensures that you maintain control while they reveal their intentions more openly. Rule 8 is timing your responses. Impulsivity is the manipulator's ally. If you respond too quickly, you play into their trap. Too slowly, and you risk appearing indifferent or disengaged. Observe, wait, and strike with precision. Timing is a weapon that converts patience into tactical advantage. Deliberate responses force the manipulator to overextend, make mistakes, or reveal too much. Every delayed reaction is a step toward turning the game in your favor. Rule 9. Use psychological mirrors. Reflecting behavior subtly can reveal hidden intentions. If a manipulator tries to induce guilt, calmly mirror concern without emotion. If they attempt flattery, acknowledge without fluster. This creates a distortion in their perception. They begin to question their own approach. Psychological mirroring is not imitation. It is a tool to destabilize their manipulative rhythm while you remain firmly in control. Rule 10. Control information flow. Manipulators exploit gaps in knowledge, uncertainty, or secrecy. By carefully controlling what information you reveal and to whom, you limit opportunities for exploitation. Share selectively, clarify ambiguities proactively, and always keep critical data under your supervision. Information is power. The less they can manipulate through unseen factors, the more untouchable you become. The 11th rule: anticipate escalation. Many manipulators escalate subtly to test boundaries, provoke reactions, or sow confusion. Recognize the patterns, set internal limits, and respond with calculated measures. Do not allow escalation to dictate your strategy. Instead, anticipate it, prepare countermeasures, and maintain the upper hand without revealing your plan. The calm observer always has the advantage over the one who relies on chaos. Rule 12. Establish visible consequences. Manipulators respect authority only when it is enforceable. By defining non-negotiable boundaries, consistently applying consequences, and maintaining visibility of these rules, you prevent manipulation before it begins. Consistency, firmness, and clarity in your limits signal strength that cannot be ignored. Rule 13. Learn the art of redirection. Instead of confronting every manipulation head-on, redirect attention to an arena you control. Guide the conversation, refocus on facts, and steer interactions toward outcomes favorable to you. Redirection is subtle, powerful, and disarms the manipulator without overt conflict. Finally, Rule 14. Internalize these principles daily. Outsmarting manipulators is not a single victory. It is a state of mind. Your awareness, calm, independence, and clarity must become instinct. Every interaction, minor or major, becomes an opportunity to strengthen these habits. Over time, manipulators stop being a threat, not because they are gone, but because you have become untouchable. They are rendered ineffective by your mastery of mind and strategy. By embracing these strategies, you transform from a passive observer to an active force. Every whisper of deception, every attempt to control, every subtle threat becomes an exercise in power, patience, and calculated response. Manipulators lose their influence because they cannot predict the mind that no longer reacts predictably and no longer fears them. They are exposed. You are liberated. Number 3, turn their strengths into weaknesses. By now, you understand the battlefield. Manipulation thrives where perception is weak and reaction is predictable. But surviving is only the first step. The next phase is domination through foresight. Manipulators rely on gaps in your attention, on moments when your focus wavers. They count on fatigue, distraction, or emotional distraction to gain leverage. The third rule of mastery is this: anticipate every move, not react. A mind trained in foresight does not merely survive manipulation, it controls it. You see the invisible threads they pull, the patterns they rely on, and the weak points they exploit. Consider the subtle art of pattern recognition. Every manipulator leaves traces even if hidden beneath charm or deception. The slight hesitation in speech, a micro-expression, a repeated tactic, they are not random. They are signatures. By cataloging these behaviors mentally, you create a map of their intentions before words are spoken. When you know their patterns, every encounter becomes predictable, and predictability is power. The manipulator thrives in uncertainty. You thrive in knowledge. The next critical weapon is selective engagement. Manipulators feed on your attention. Every argument, every correction, every clarification is fuel for them. By engaging only when strategically advantageous, you conserve mental energy and deny them the leverage they seek. Learn to recognize which battles to fight and which to let pass. Silence is not submission. It is a tactical pause. In these moments, observe. In these moments, plan. In these moments, you are building a psychological advantage invisible to them. Rule 3. Turn their strengths into weaknesses. A manipulator's charm, eloquence, or authority is effective because it goes unchallenged. Challenge it indirectly. A compliment used strategically can become a mirror, reflecting overconfidence back onto them. Their persuasive tactics can be reframed or neutralized with subtle questioning or calmly stated facts. The moment you expose the dependency of their success on your reaction, their power diminishes. Another overlooked principle is the economy of truth. Manipulators often twist facts, exaggerate, or create half-truths. The more reactive you are to every lie, the deeper you are drawn into their web. Instead, respond selectively with precision. Address critical inaccuracies that could threaten your position while ignoring inconsequential distortions. By conserving mental and verbal energy, you create a controlled environment where manipulation cannot spread unchecked. Rule 5. Leverage the social hierarchy subtly. Manipulators often operate under the assumption that influence is linear. They believe their position grants authority or obedience. Counter this by building your own informal influence network. Peers, allies, mentors, and observers who recognize competence and judgment. When others see your wisdom and composure, the manipulator's assumptions about control are invalidated. They must then recalibrate, and every recalibration is a step toward their unraveling. Rule 6. Controlled unpredictability. Once manipulators understand your patterns, they regain some control. Introduce deliberate unpredictability into your behavior without chaos. A calm, measured shift in approach, tone, or timing confuses and destabilizes them. The key is subtlety. The manipulator should question themselves, not you. When your responses cannot be anticipated, they cannot manipulate effectively. Rule 7. Strategic patience over impulse. The manipulator will often create pressure, urgency, or artificial deadlines to provoke hasty decisions. Recognize these ploys. Respond with measured patience. Each delayed reaction forces them to overexpose their tactics. As they escalate or adapt, your mental fortitude strengthens and your strategy gains clarity. Patience converts their aggression into a revealing performance. Rule 8. The art of mental detachment. Emotional neutrality is not indifference. It is strategic observation. Detach from provocation, drama, and flattery. View interactions as experiments. What are they testing? What vulnerabilities are they seeking? Each interaction is data. Every manipulation attempt becomes insight into their psychology. The more detached you are, the more accurate your predictions and the stronger your countermeasures. Rule 9. Calculated confrontation. Direct confrontation is dangerous unless carefully planned. The manipulator thrives on uncalculated reactions. Identify the precise moment when confrontation yields maximum leverage. When allies, evidence, or circumstance amplify your position, the confrontation then ceases to be reactive and becomes strategic. When executed correctly, it forces acknowledgement, compliance, or withdrawal without jeopardizing your authority. Rule 10. The psychological echo. Manipulators often rely on repetition, repeated assertions, insinuations, or indirect influence. Reflect this strategy back subtly. Reinforce consequences, boundaries, or truths consistently. Each repetition builds perception alignment, subtly correcting distortions they attempt. Manipulation relies on inconsistent perception. By repeating clarity, you render their influence ineffective. Rule 11. Control over narrative. Manipulators depend on controlling how others perceive events. By maintaining your own narrative, you deprive them of leverage. Document interactions, clarify statements publicly when necessary, and frame events strategically. When others see your version aligned with fact and composure, manipulation falters. Perception is often more powerful than reality. Control it, and you control the outcome. Rule 12. Preemptive strategy. Identify likely manipulative attempts before they occur, and prepare responses or defenses. The manipulator expects reaction, not anticipation. Preemption destabilizes them, forcing improvisation under your control. Every calculated preemptive action strengthens your mental dominance. Rule 13. Maintain internal standards. Do not adopt the manipulator's ethics or logic. They may attempt to blur moral lines or redefine rules. Establish and adhere to your internal code. Consistency in principles reduces opportunities for manipulation and increases predictability for yourself, while reducing predictability for them. Your internal consistency becomes a fortress. Rule 14. Final observation. Outsmarting a manipulator is iterative. Each interaction teaches, each reaction refines strategy. Your goal is not to destroy, humiliate, or dominate unnecessarily. It is to render manipulation ineffective. The manipulator, left unable to predict, control, or destabilize, is powerless. Mastery is psychological invisibility. You are untouchable because their tools no longer work. By practicing foresight, pattern recognition, selective engagement, and controlled unpredictability, you move beyond defense into subtle control. Each tactic strengthens your mental acuity and erodes the manipulator's influence. The more consistent your application, the more their attempts collapse under scrutiny. Every encounter becomes a lesson, every strategy an advantage, until manipulation is no longer a threat. It is a plaything in your hands, guided by the mind of a strategist who has learned to see, anticipate, and control. Number 4, turning the tables completely, transforming. By the time you reach mastery over the manipulator, your mind has evolved into a weapon of precision. But mastery is not static. It demands constant sharpening, constant awareness, constant adaptation. Number 4 is about turning the tables completely, transforming defensive strategies into offensive foresight. You are no longer merely surviving their tactics. You are controlling the game. You dictate the tempo, the stakes, and the outcome. First, understand the anatomy of influence. Every manipulator operates on psychological levers: fear, guilt, desire, curiosity. Each lever has a threshold, a point at which influence becomes effective. By observing patterns across different manipulators, you begin to predict which levers will be used against you and how strongly. Once you know this, you can either neutralize the pressure or repurpose it to your advantage. The more familiar you are with their toolkit, the less power it holds over you. Next, harness the power of strategic opacity. Manipulators feed on transparency. They thrive when they can anticipate your reactions. To counter this, cultivate a controlled opacity. Reveal only what strengthens your position. Let ambiguity be your shield. The manipulator's assumptions must fail. When they act on misperceptions, you gain initiative. Every step they take based on false assumptions moves them closer to your strategy's trap. Rule 15. The subtle art of psychological redirection. Manipulators attempt to dominate by framing discussions, narratives, and conflicts to suit their goals. Learn to redirect these frames subtly. When they push you toward confrontation, pivot toward insight. When they appeal to fear, pivot toward clarity. Their efforts to corner you become avenues for strategic expansion. Each redirection reduces their control while strengthening your position. Rule 16. The economy of energy and attention. A manipulator's most effective weapon is your energy, emotional, mental, even physical. Every wasted debate, every reaction to trivial provocations is fuel for their agenda. Guard your energy fiercely. Channel it into actions that amplify your influence and awareness. Let the trivial slide. Inaction in the right context is far more powerful than reaction. Your calm becomes a silent force that frustrates and destabilizes. Rule 17. Creating controlled dependency. Manipulators thrive where others rely on them, often subtly constructing situations where they are indispensable. You must invert this principle. Ensure that your competence, judgment, and consistency are recognized as critical by those around you. When allies, colleagues, or observers unconsciously depend on your insight, the manipulator loses their unilateral influence. They are no longer the center of gravity. Your reliability has become the pivot of the environment. Rule 18. Use observation as a weapon. Every interaction carries information. Micro-expressions, tone variations, hesitation. These are data points. Keep mental records, even subconsciously, of patterns and anomalies. Over time, these observations allow you to predict behavior with uncanny accuracy. The manipulator begins to act like an open book, unknowingly revealing intentions, vulnerabilities, and predictable responses. The quiet observer holds the real power. Rule 19. Emotional mirroring as control. Subtle mirroring of a manipulator's emotional cues can be disarming. By reflecting, you create a false sense of alignment. They believe their influence is working, but in reality, you are collecting data, maintaining calm, and guiding the conversation toward outcomes advantageous to you. Emotional mirroring is not empathy. It is tactical synchronization. Rule 20. The silent assertion of boundaries. A manipulator tests limits relentlessly. Every intrusion into your space, every challenge to your judgment is a probe. Respond with measured firmness, consistently and without theatrics. Boundaries are the framework for your mental fortress. Every time a manipulator encounters a non-negotiable limit, their strategies weaken. Respect your own limits as though they were walls around a castle. Intrusions fail where walls are solid. Rule 21. Subtle escalation of consequences. Manipulators often operate under the assumption that their actions carry no repercussions. Quietly establish the rules of engagement. Let them discover incrementally that manipulation has a cost. This is not confrontation, it is strategic conditioning. Each misstep incurs a consequence, small at first but increasingly significant, creating an environment where manipulation is no longer low risk. Rule 22. Information asymmetry. Always know more than the manipulator. Knowledge is the currency of power. Gather data about the context, the people involved, and the objectives they cannot see clearly. When information asymmetry is on your side, you operate from a position of inevitability. The manipulator's strategies falter because they are based on incomplete or incorrect assumptions, while you see the full picture. Rule 23. Anticipate escalation and remain calm. The manipulator may intensify their efforts when they sense resistance. Emotional reactions play directly into their hands. Stay composed. Anticipate the pressure, assess it, and choose your response strategically. Escalation should never force you into reactive moves. The calm strategist thrives where the manipulator overextends themselves. Rule 24. Strategic alliances and leverage. Identify allies who can provide influence, observation, or protection. Manipulators operate effectively when isolated. By building a network of trust and authority, you diminish their ability to operate unchallenged. Each alliance is not a display of dependence, but a strategic strengthening of your own position. Rule 25. Reinforce your personal narrative. Manipulators often try to rewrite perception. Counter this with consistent, controlled messaging about your actions, values, and boundaries. Over time, your narrative becomes the default lens through which others perceive events. Manipulation attempts become anomalies in a reality anchored by your consistency. By this stage, the practitioner is no longer defensive but predictive. Every tactic learned in previous sections now coalesces into a seamless strategy of mental dominance. You have turned attention, patience, observation, and controlled engagement into a fortress of influence. Manipulation no longer threatens because your mind now operates several steps ahead, calculating outcomes, preempting tactics, and controlling perception. The manipulator, once confident, now hesitates. Their attempts become visible, predictable, and ultimately ineffective. They operate under the illusion of power while you orchestrate outcomes silently. In this section, you've learned that mastery over manipulation is not just survival. It is creating conditions where manipulation ceases to exist. You don't react. You anticipate. You don't follow. You lead. You don't merely resist. You dominate the battlefield of influence before it even begins. Number 5. Control perception through selective exposure. Having mastered observation, boundary setting, and strategic influence, you are now ready to elevate your approach. Number 5 focuses on transforming mental defense into systematic dominance, where your interactions no longer merely neutralize manipulation, but actively control the environment and shape outcomes before others even realize it. This is the art of preemptive influence. Rule 26. Control perception through selective exposure. Manipulators rely on shaping narratives. They thrive when information is scattered, inconsistent, or emotionally charged. You must learn to curate what others perceive. Share information strategically, emphasize facts that reinforce your position, and omit what could be twisted against you. Your silence becomes a weapon. What you do not reveal cannot be exploited. By controlling perception, you subtly guide choices, discussions, and actions without direct confrontation. Rule 27. The psychology of delayed response. Impulsivity is a manipulator's ally. Every quick reaction is ammunition they can exploit. Train yourself to pause, observe, and calculate. Let others assume your hesitation is indecision, while in reality, it is a deliberate assessment of risk and opportunity. Delay is power. It frustrates attempts at manipulation because the manipulator cannot predict your moves. In your calm, every impulsive action by them looks reckless. Rule 28. Deploy controlled reciprocity. Manipulators often leverage favors, obligations, and indebtedness to gain influence. Reverse this strategy by offering precisely calibrated responses. Give enough to appear cooperative but retain strategic advantage. When a manipulator expects full compliance, your measured reciprocation destabilizes their assumptions. They begin to calculate your intentions, giving you insight into their planning. Each calculated concession strengthens your position rather than weakening it. Rule 29. Emotional anchoring. Every interaction carries emotional energy. Manipulators attempt to provoke fear, guilt, or desire to influence decisions. By anchoring your emotions in neutrality or confidence, you create a stable reference point. Others, including the manipulator, will begin to adapt to your emotional state. This subtle dominance redirects influence. Their attempts at emotional leverage fall flat. Your consistency becomes a psychological tether that manipulates their own expectations and reactions. Rule 30. The power of subtle public positioning. Influence is magnified when others perceive authority. Display competence, decisiveness, and composure in ways that are visible yet non-confrontational. By cultivating credibility in social and professional settings, you reduce the manipulator's ability to isolate or target you. Authority, once acknowledged by others, serves as a shield and amplifies your influence over the environment. The manipulator now operates in a landscape where you are the pivot, not them. Rule 31. Strategic ambiguity in communication. The manipulator craves clarity, predictability, and immediate compliance. Use ambiguity as a strategic tool. Answer questions with measured flexibility. Let your position remain partly concealed, forcing the manipulator to overextend themselves in guessing your intentions. Ambiguity, wielded skillfully, is a psychological trap. They act aggressively on incomplete information, while you remain in full control of your plans. Rule 32. Turn observation into foresight. By now, your accumulated observations are no longer passive. They become predictive. Track patterns, repetitions, and deviations in behavior. Use these insights to anticipate manipulative moves before they occur. The manipulator will act assuming they are unseen, while you foresee every step. This is the transition from reactive strategy to proactive dominance, where influence is exerted silently, invisibly, but decisively. Rule 33. Manipulation as a mirror. Sometimes the most effective strategy is to let the manipulator reveal themselves completely. Through patience, controlled engagement, and subtle questioning, you encourage them to disclose intentions, vulnerabilities, and predictable behavior. Their own tactics provide you with the intelligence needed to dismantle their influence. In this way, the manipulator's strength becomes their own undoing. You turn their methods against them without overt confrontation. Rule 34. The principle of strategic withdrawal. Not every engagement is worth your energy or attention. Recognize moments where stepping back strengthens your position. Absence can create perception gaps, heighten anticipation, and allow the manipulator to overreach. When they act on assumptions without your input, they are effectively trapped by their own tactics. Strategic withdrawal is not avoidance. It is active control of timing, perception, and consequence. Rule 35. Reinforce your network quietly. Influence is rarely exerted in isolation. Cultivate relationships that indirectly strengthen your authority. Let your competence, reliability, and insight be recognized by others who can observe, support, and amplify your strategic presence. A manipulator's influence diminishes when your credibility and reach become the reference point. Your network is an invisible force field, deflecting attempts at manipulation without open conflict. Rule 36. Preemptive framing of interactions. Anticipate the manipulator's arguments and subtly frame discussions before they occur. By establishing context, priorities, and acceptable boundaries in advance, you shape the narrative on your terms. The manipulator then reacts within a framework you control, not the reverse. Framing is not domination through force, but through intellectual and psychological foresight. Rule 37. Consistency as psychological leverage. Manipulators exploit unpredictability, emotional volatility, and inconsistency. Maintain a disciplined approach to behavior, responses, and boundaries. Over time, your consistency creates predictability that favors you. The manipulator's attempts to destabilize you fail because you are anchored in a pattern they cannot disrupt. Consistency becomes a silent form of control over the environment and the expectations of others. Rule 38. Strategic exposure of their overreach. When manipulators miscalculate or overextend, subtle exposure can be more powerful than confrontation. Allow their errors to become visible through natural consequences, observation, and quiet documentation. When others recognize the misstep, the manipulator loses authority, influence, and credibility. Your victory is quiet but decisive, executed without emotional display, letting reality serve as your instrument. By now, the manipulator's tactics no longer dictate your actions. Your strategy has transitioned from reactive to proactive. Every engagement, every observation, every calculated silence is a move in a chess game of influence. You are no longer surviving their maneuvers. You are shaping the environment, framing reality, and controlling perception. Manipulation, which once threatened your clarity and autonomy, now encounters an immovable, disciplined mind operating with foresight, precision, and authority. Number 5 is the stage where control becomes subtle, total, and invisible. The manipulator operates under the illusion of dominance while you orchestrate outcomes quietly. Your power lies not in confrontation, but in anticipation, observation, and disciplined application of psychological leverage. You have moved beyond defense into full mastery of influence, setting the stage for the final section, where ultimate control and invulnerability are explored. Number 6. Internalize invulnerability. You have now learned to observe, protect, influence, anticipate, and subtly dominate. Number 6 is the final stage, where mastery over manipulators is no longer a strategy applied intermittently. It becomes a state of being, a mental architecture that ensures your decisions, environment, and outcomes are guided by your discipline and foresight, not by the whims of those who seek to manipulate you. This is where survival evolves into psychological supremacy. Rule 39. Internalize invulnerability. The manipulator's strength comes from perceiving weakness, hesitation, or uncertainty. To make yourself unbreakable, you must internalize a sense of invulnerability. This is not arrogance, but clarity and confidence grounded in preparation, foresight, and self-mastery. Every plan, every calculation, every observation contributes to an internal fortress. No flattery, guilt, or fear can penetrate this state. Your mind becomes the arena where manipulative tactics fail before they begin. Rule 40. Anticipate deception at all levels. True mastery requires the ability to predict not only obvious manipulation but also the subtle, hidden currents beneath conversation, gesture, and choice. Manipulators often operate through layers of implication, coded language, and indirect pressure. Train yourself to recognize the hidden agendas behind even casual interactions. By anticipating deception in advance, you transform potential threats into predictable, manageable variables. Rule 41. Normalize strategic skepticism. Trust is a valuable resource, but manipulators exploit it without hesitation. Make skepticism habitual, not cynical. Question motives, assess patterns, and evaluate potential outcomes before committing mentally or emotionally. This does not make you distant or isolated. It makes your influence intentional and your responses precise. Skepticism becomes the lens through which manipulation is neutralized before it has any impact. Rule 42. Convert resistance into leverage. Manipulators often respond to your resistance with increased effort, escalation, or coercion. Rather than engage emotionally, convert this resistance into intelligence. Observe how they escalate, what triggers them, and where their boundaries lie. Each act of attempted manipulation becomes data for your strategy, a window into their mindset. Resistance is no longer an obstacle, it is a resource. Rule 43. Systematize mental simulations. Every engagement, potential confrontation, or negotiation is an opportunity for mental rehearsal. Run multiple scenarios in your mind, testing how manipulative strategies could unfold and how you can respond optimally. These simulations create rapid instinctive clarity in real situations. By the time a manipulator acts, your mind has already rehearsed outcomes and responses, leaving you calm, prepared, and unshakable. Rule 44. Institutionalize psychological spacing. Distance is a powerful tool against manipulation. Physical proximity, frequency of contact, and emotional availability can all be modulated to reduce vulnerability. Create boundaries that are invisible yet firm, where the manipulator can act but cannot encroach. This spacing forces the manipulator to operate under constraints they do not fully perceive, limiting their effectiveness while maintaining your control. Rule 45. Leverage narrative control. The story others tell about you shapes your reality in their minds. By controlling what is shared, emphasized, or highlighted, you shape the narrative preemptively. Let the manipulator operate in a story you define, one where your competence, foresight, and composure are central, and their influence appears limited. Narrative control is subtle but decisive. Reality itself begins to operate according to the structure you impose. Rule 46. Employ psychological asymmetry. Manipulators thrive when interactions are balanced, when they can predict responses and operate symmetrically. Break this balance. Introduce subtle asymmetry, unpredictability in timing, tone, or strategy. This forces the manipulator to expend cognitive and emotional energy trying to anticipate your actions while you remain a step ahead. Asymmetry is a quiet, relentless form of dominance that is difficult to counter. Rule 47. Convert competence into reputation. Influence is magnified when others perceive your capability and authority. Cultivate visible competence in professional, social, and personal spheres. Manipulators rely on isolation or perceived superiority. A reputation for strategic acumen becomes a shield that amplifies your leverage. Others begin to defer to your judgment, support your decisions, and provide you indirect reinforcement, further reducing the manipulator's influence. Rule 48. Finalize the cycle of observation, anticipation, and control. All previous rules converge here. Observation without action is passive. Resistance without foresight is reactive. Influence without control is temporary. The manipulator now operates within a system you orchestrate. Your calm, clarity, boundaries, and strategic foresight create a mental ecosystem where manipulation cannot flourish. Every encounter, every reaction, every choice is aligned with your objectives and autonomy. Rule 49. Make psychological endurance habitual. Long-term mastery is not a single act. It is a habit. Train yourself daily in patience, clarity, reflection, and anticipation. Let every interaction, manipulative or otherwise, serve as reinforcement of discipline. The manipulator becomes a minor variable in a mental ecosystem designed for strategic clarity, resilience, and dominance. Your mind becomes a fortress, resilient not only in confrontation, but in prolonged exposure to stress, conflict, and psychological games. Rule 50. Transition from survival to silent supremacy. Survival against manipulators is no longer your goal. Silent supremacy is. You are no longer responding. You are orchestrating. The manipulator's tactics bounce off your composed, disciplined, and foresightful mind. Your influence radiates quietly. Decisions unfold according to your design, and your environment conforms to the patterns you establish. You have become impossible to break, not through aggression, but through psychological mastery, subtle dominance, and unshakable clarity. By the end of this section, the manipulator is no longer an external threat. They are a predictable element within a system you control. Your mastery of rules, observation, boundaries, foresight, emotional discipline, and influence ensures that you operate at a level of psychological superiority. You have internalized the Machiavellian principle. The ultimate power is quiet, deliberate, and invisible. Influence does not need to be announced. Control does not need to be demonstrated. Mastery exists in the alignment of thought, action, and environment. Number 6 completes your journey from awareness to absolute strategic dominance. You now possess the tools to outsmart manipulators in every interaction, to anticipate and neutralize their tactics, and to exert influence without visible effort. Your mind is no longer a battlefield. It is the command center from which reality is subtly, decisively, and ruthlessly guided.